To introduce John Tallman. It's been almost 2 days since he's been here because he came with the Palm Society on Saturday. John is a native of Seattle, born and raised, also went to University of Washington there, took his undergraduate work in physical education, then did master's work in both psychology and physical education, and took a master's in physical ed. When he graduated, he joined the faculty at University of Washington and was on their coaching staff and was head swim coach. He had that job for 17 years and then moved to Ventura and joined the faculty at Ventura College. At that point, he was also teaching swimming, and coming from Seattle, he didn't have a broad experience with palms. However, he did have a broad experience with swimming pools and knew that they could look better than the one he did at Ventura. And wanted to landscape it, and because of that became interested in palms. That was in 1972. Now we're 20-some years later, and John is quite a palm enthusiast, a palm expert, grows a lot of palms from seed, and did a very successful job of landscaping the pool at Ventura. He also moved from the coaching side up into administration and is now vice chancellor for instruction at Ventura College. And today he comes to talk to us about palms. I think he's going to do most of his talking outside where the palms are, where we can look at examples of the palms, the various features that help you identify a palm, the things that would help you get through a key like this. And so, unlike our last maybe 3 lectures, most of this one will be outdoors. And it's a pleasure to introduce John Tallman.
Thank you very much. I want to begin by thanking and commending all of you for being docents. I think it's a tremendous program. I make a point to go with a different docent every time that I'm here, and I've enjoyed them all and found they've all done a good job. I think back to one of our tours in the Palm Society long before this administration. It was about 1975. We were allowed to have 150 people for that tour. We didn't handle that like we do now. We now make people get a ticket and call up and have a reservation. We had over 200 show up. That was prior to any docent program. There were people all over here. It was a mess. Most of the people had a good time, but they didn't learn much and they didn't see the whole garden. If you don't have a docent here, you're not even going to halfway cover the grounds. Now, I think the docent program is very valuable, and again, I thank you for taking the time to be one, and really commend you for doing that. It's a real contribution to learning. As Steve said, we're going outside real soon. I just have a couple remarks to make indoors. I think you'll be able to hear me out there. Old coaches never lose their voice. I want to mention this booklet. It's got some terminology in the front, and even the cover gives you some information. And notice there are 2 lists. One is the list of the most common palms in Southern California, and then there's kind of a collector's list, and many of those on that collector's list are here in Lotus Land. This book was produced primarily by a lady, her name is on the front page, Trish Reynoso. She lives here in Santa Barbara. She took a list that I had and worked on it. It took her about 3 years because the entire executive committee all had different ideas about what should be on which list and how cold-hardy was something. And she was very patient and did a beautiful job. And so this is Santa Barbara's contribution to palm knowledge in Southern California. And I'm very happy that you can have one of these because I think it will answer a lot of your questions about palms. Before we go outdoors, the other thing I want to mention is that I did bring some seedlings today. I understand that you have about an hour's tape and you like people who miss to watch a tape and make up. I'm very impressed by how few people are missing. And I'm very impressed by how current you're staying on your training. That's very commendable. We probably will be out of tape by the time we get to a couple of these, so I'll mention one of them now. These palms here are from your Rhopalostylus sapida, the shaving brush palms, and you have them in several places. The main group is down on the main drive here on the right, and They're the only group of Rhopalostylus sapida that I'm aware of in California that really appear to be purebreds. The Rhopalostylus palms hybridize fairly easily, and most of them growing in Southern California now are second and third generation seeds from this area. And there are no sapitas that really look, no number of them that look like yours here. And that's not just my impression, that's the impression of many people in the Palm Society, that these are the real sapida. And we'll see them at the end of the tour. We'll also see a Boweri, which is in flower, and give you a chance to tell them apart. You can pick up a seedling either now or when the meeting's over. The other seedlings there are from what I consider your rarest tree. I tried to bring enough of those so that everyone could have one. That's Brahianita, and we're certainly going to get by it. It's the only fruiting tree in California, Brahianita. And there are a few Jubias there. Of course, they won't fit in very many yards, but you might like one. And there are a few Brahia elegans there. Brahia elegans is the Francheski Palm, and it's been associated with Santa Barbara since about 1890, but now there are hardly any here. The one at the courthouse is very old. It flowered about 10 years ago. It's quit setting fruit. I think the one here is too old to set fruit anymore, too. I've never seen it with fruit. But we need to get more Brahia elegans back into Santa Barbara. So with those opening remarks, I'm going to lead you out to the right, and we're going to start looking at palms. May I have the article back? Is this strange-looking Phoenix robellini here. One time there was only one of this type of palm in California, and it's over here in another part of Lotus land. And some of the old Palm Society members tell me the madam paid about $3,000 for it a long, long time ago. And it's more like a candelabra. This one will eventually probably look the same way. In the late 60s, Pauline Sullivan and her husband had a nursery, and they got a shipment of Phoenix robellini that were sold mostly in Santa Barbara and Ventura and a few other places. In the late 70s, they started doing this. And it's not that the plant's been accidentally hurt in responding. It is genetic. This is a form of palm. It's from Laos. Some people call it the crested robellini. Some people call it Phoenix Laos. Some people call it the multi-trunk robellini. It's got lots of nicknames. Since it's from Laos, I kind of prefer the Phoenix Laos. We talked to people who had them in Ventura into donating them to the college, and we have male and female there. This one, I think, is female, and we actually set seed once. It's kind of an interesting plant. I think it will get better looking as it gets older, and we'll see the other one later. Somehow it's from that same litter, and that was in the late 60s that they came here.
Okay, so the one behind it, is that one?
The rest of these here are the regular robellinis.
Oh.
Is this one over here the same, this robellini that has the seed on it?
No, that's a female robellini. Remember, I have frequently seen seeds here that have been pollinized. It depends on the wind and insects.
Yeah, we need to
fill this area so you can see these two plants. We're going to look at several palms right in this area. We'll start with the Alexander palm. You have in Santa Barbara a lot of king palms as street trees. Those are our Phoenix Cunninghamiana. This one is our Phoenix Alexander, very close relative. This one's from Queensland. This is a particular kind that has a ridged trunk that's sometimes given the nickname Beatrice. The Alexander palm gets much taller than the king palm. This will eventually be a very tall palm. They're fairly cold hardy. There are also some other Arcanto Phoenix that I think eventually Lotus Land will have. There's one that has a purple crown shaft. These are nice palms. On Virginia's list, she indicates that they're deciduous, which means they shed their leaves. What Palm Society people like to call those are self-cleaning. The deciduous is self-cleaning. That will fall right off. You don't have to do any work. So they're very clean, neat palms.
Do these grow in the rainforest area of Queensland? or do they grow
Pretty extensively,
more
pretty wide
inland.
range, and up into the mountains,
up into the mountains?
even up into the mountains.
So they get very little shade there?
They grow up through the shade. But no, they're an understory plant initially, and then they grow up through.
Would you repeat
Now,
the name, please?
Arcantophoenix alexandra. You can come up and write it down if you get a chance.
It's on the label up here.
Now behind it is a relatively rare palm. The Lord Howe Island is 600 miles east of Australia and almost the same latitude as Santa Barbara. It's about 32, 33 south, and here we're about 35 north. It's not a very big island, has a maritime climate, somewhat similar to Santa Barbara. They probably don't have any Santa Anas. It's a very unusual island. It has 4 native palms. The lowest one on the island at sea level is Howie Forstariana, what the forest called the Kinship Palm. And of course, Lotus land has many, many Howie Forstarianas down the other end of the main drive. The second palm up is Howie Moriana, and there are a few of those down the end of the main drive. We'll point those out as we go by and show you how to tell them from the Forstariana. Third one up the island is this one, Hedicipi Canterburyana. It's hard to grow. It tends to rot. Pardon?
Which one you did it.
This one.
Thanks.
This is one of only a few that have ever set seed in California. Those seed are a long way from ripe. I hope nobody steals them before they get ripe, so Virginia can try to make some more of these. Better put some wire on those turkeys as they get ripe. And they appear to me that they are good seed. Sometimes plants set false seed, and some palms will do that. By their size, I would say these are going to be viable seed. This is another palm with what's called a crown shaft, and it's another palm that's very neat and clean. Don't covet one because they're very hard to find. They're pretty scarce. That's Hedicipi Canterburyana.
So
Now
those seed,
So I've been trying to tell them where they can find them again.
I think you do an outstanding job of keeping up labels. We've given up at the college because we're open to the public. It's an open. Technically, they're called Camadoria. They fall in about 5 different classes. Information about them was very sadly lacking. There was a lot of confusion until last year. And one of the Palm Society members, who's a UCal farm advisor, got permission from UCal to do a study and do a book. And some Palm Society members contributed to financing the book. We now have terrific information about the bamboo palms, far in excess of what we had before. This palm used to be called Camadoria Woodsoniana, which it's labeled as. Now it's known to be a giant form of the Camadoria costaricana. It has beautiful chunks. It's certainly one of the finer bamboo palms, and this is an outstanding specimen. These little guys here have been called the Parlor Palm and the Anthabella. They're one of the commonest bamboo palms. And in Mexico, they really set a lot of seed. They don't tend to here. And they're sprouted and sold in supermarkets and everywhere. It's a very common palm. Moving along to this one, which looks a little like that one, but it's not. This is now known to be Camadoria Patchoulensis. And it's a graceful palm. It's very curving. It'll throw out new shoot, even quite a ways from the trunk sometimes. It's not a good house plant, nor is the giant one. This one can be a good house plant. In California, the walking stick palm, Linospadix monostaca, they cut them and use them for walking sticks in some places. It seems a shame to me. They're beautiful palms. We have here also a couple of native Hawaiian palms. I think this is one I donated. They need to be in more sun. Maybe Virginia will move them one of these days if she can find a home for Prochardias and get them all together. They have some more in the greenhouse that they'll eventually be planting. There are about 30 species of Prochardias in Hawaii. It's the only palm that is native to Hawaii. Every other palm in Hawaii has been brought in there. Only the Prochardias are native. Now back in the tree back there, you'll see the vine palm. Camadoria elatior. Oh, and it has seeds. That looks like good seed too, because I have that palm, and that's the size the seeds get when they're good, if they're not ripe. You see how it vines up? Very unusual palm. Its name is Camadoria elatior, E-L-A-T-I-O-R. And its nickname is the vine palm for obvious reasons. And some of you in the back, you'll have to move up to see it. The rest of us will move forward where it only takes one, and Dio where it takes two. But within that mono group, there are a lot of ways it works. Sometimes, for example, all of the males will be down on the tip, and the females up there, and the males will come out first, and by the time the females are ready, the male pollen's gone. So even though the plant, it has both flower parts, it can't really self-reproduce. About half of the mono plants can't really very well produce with only one unless man helps it. If you take a bag and collect that male pollen and put it in the refrigerator, and a month later when the female's ready, you can trick nature and go ahead and set fruit. But basically they're not intended to reproduce all by themselves, even the mono plants, for the most part.
Both the asexual reproduction.
No, there is no asexual reproduction. It does take no parthenogenesis in palm.
John, the question back here is how can they reproduce in the wild then? Do they need help?
Because there are more than one. There are males and females, and if there are two of these, and they're at slightly different flower stages, the second one out, the pollen from that male will fertilize the first one where the female by then is ready. So in clumps of them, they can reproduce. But it's this plant, pollinating this plant, not self-reproduction, so that they are maintaining a gene pool, which gives them the ability to respond to nature's changes and such. If everything were cloned and reproduced exactly as the parent, plants or people wouldn't be able to respond to change in their environment. There is Stylus sapida. You also have some purebred Boweri. Boweri have white flowers. See how white that is? Sapida have red flowers. And then as usual in nature, the color is dominant over non-color. The hybrids have red flowers. When you have white flowers, you know you have a purebred. This is a purebred Boweri. And Boweri have bigger seeds than do the sapida. When we get to the sapida, you'll see that their seeds are smaller. There's some other ways that you tell. The Boweri tends to have a little gap between where the petiole meets the trunk and the first leaflet. See, it's about a foot on that one. The sapida, the leaflets will crowd all the way down to the trunk as a rule. But these are purebred palms. Very nice. You'll also notice when you see the sapitas that the sapida is a little more of a straight up feather duster when they're the true sapida. This is a nice bamboo palm called Ernesti augusti. This is a male plant. Uh-oh, we got 3 male plants there, all males. And I've got an oversupply of females in my house. They're hard to set seed on that plant. They have sticky pollen. And it's a very ornamental plant. There is a form that has leaves about twice that big. You'll notice the Boweri is naturalizing. See all the little Boweri coming up down there? It's native to latitude almost exactly the same as this, and it can perpetuate itself in this climate. So we're going to move. These are fishtail palms. Boy, that got blown down last night. That wasn't there Saturday. There was some.
There are 2 of them there.
And fishtails take the wind quite well. They must have had a lot of wind. The Palm Society people have argued at length over what most of these is. The general conclusion is probably Caryota urens, but maybe Caryota ocalandra. Caryota urens is native to India and parts of China. Caryota ocalandra is native to the Canton area in China. It's a little smaller, and these look kind of hard to tell. One of them has some fruit, that's viable fruit here. when you see them way up there, it may look like fruit, but that's not even quite open flowers yet. This has flowered and fruited. They have the little triads of flowers, one female accompanied by 2 males, and they sometimes set seed in this climate, more often not. So this one is comfortable and happy. It's decided it's going to have some puppies. And those seeds take about a year to germinate, but a good percentage of them do germinate. They're probably about 6 months away from being ripe. There were no Caryotiurans in this country until 1937. The man named David Barry, who is a famous palm and plant collector, saw a picture in Time magazine of a town called Darjeeling in India, and he saw a fishtail palm in the back and snow on the ground. He had a lot of money. He jumped on a plane and flew over there and got seed and brought the first cold hardy fishtails back here. Now there's a lot of them of that group of set seed here, and they're fairly well established. They're much in demand landscaping plant. And this plant right here is a different kind. You'll see how much more pointy the leaves are, and it's a little grayer looking. This one is Caryota Cumingii, Cumingii, and so is that one over there. If you look closely, you can see considerable difference between the leaflets on those. I would vote that these are probably urines, not Ocalandra, because when you stand underneath an Ocalandra, there's more open sky. Urines blocks the sky out better. It's kind of hard to tell because there's so many of those close together. There are about 10 or 12 species in the genus. There's some argument about will grow here.
I think there was a question.
Another question?
Do the fishtail palms die when they finish blooming?
All right, that's a good question, and I should have brought that up. Thank you. Fishtail palms are monocarpic, as are many other palms. They flower once and die. They only flower. Monocarpic means one fruiting. And they start at the top axil, and work their way down. When they reach the bottom, the plant is dead. Fortunately, that takes quite a while. They flower on down, and they're gone. And you'll see an occasional one around Southern California that's done that. I have a Caryotomitis in my backyard that's down. It's got one to go. They still don't look too bad when they reach that state. You don't have to take them out. That one with seed on it up there has only got 4 or 5 more axils to go. But it might be there another 6, 8, maybe even 10 years. Native habitat, I've seen various ones in various people's yard. I have a tall one, taller than any of these, and and I live in a very windy place, but mine doesn't seem to do that. Maybe these are right in the path of wind. I don't know. The foothills of the Himalayas, Ocalandra to China, Cumingii to Indonesia, and Rumphiana, which they have in the nursery here, is pan-tropical. It's all over. And it's
So it
the
sounds like
most widely
palms can
grown.
grow in very cold as very hot, like the deserts, the Sahara or whatever. So they can grow.
Palms go back a long, long way. And if you see, how can I give a geology lesson in 1 minute? The world at one time was one big blob called Pangaea. And continents broke off and went here and there. And there are parts of the world, Madagascar, for example, that at one time was at latitude 60 degrees south. And that's cold. And there are an incredible number of cold hardy palms on Madagascar. It's now migrated to where it's very warm. But those palms, many of them have retained their cold hardiness. And there are other parts of the world that are like that. At one time when plants were developing, were in very cold areas. And now that continent has just moved. You have a lot of variation. Okay, we're going to look at a full hand leaf of any palm at Ventura College. Incredibly good leaf. That's a good looking one, right? The higher one right up there. But this palm does better in the sun. They look better. This is another palm that slowly self-cleans. You can pull that off pretty easily, and when it gets bigger, it will drop. It's related to the common windmill palm, Trachycarpus Fortuniai. This is also from India. It's sometimes called the Assam palm. They do set seed here. They're very slow growing, and that's another palm that's kind of in demand. And probably in the future, if the demand is met, you'll see a lot of these because they do have such a pretty leaf. Southeastern United States, the needle palm, Rapidophyllum hystrix. If you look in there, boy, those are needles. And these will grow in huge clumps in the humid southeast. This palm will take down to 5 degrees, and there are reported cases of it taking -8.
Wow.
It's incredibly cold hardy. Finger bearing, and that's the one that has edible dates. They all have miniature dates. Robelinis taste terrible. The baboons like them. These, of course, set all different kinds of dates depending upon the exact type. You have your big luscious medules, and then you have your more chewy ones. They'll hybridize freely. Phoenix pollen is very light and it'll blow a long way. And Phoenix pollen, unlike a lot of plants in the plant world, the male pollen affects what the fruit looks like. So they're very careful in India as to what kind of pollen they're using to pollinize the females, because it'll affect the quality of the date. And that isn't true of a lot of fruit. If it's pollinized, that's enough, and the fruit looks the same. And probably Chinensis, I don't know. Common, over the years, these have generally been called Trachycarpus Wagonerianus. But a man who's been a consultant for Lotus Land, Myron Kimnack, who was the curator at the Huntington, did a paper on them about 10 years ago, and it's his belief that the correct name for these is Trachycarpus Wagonerianus. And there's some variation in them, but they all have this more hairy chunk, and it's browner rather than black. This is the typical short, stiff leaf, and typically they don't tend to set fruit in Southern California. Once in a while they do. They're in with Palm Society members now. People are looking for them. Trachycarpus Wagonerianus, also called Tequila. And you can tell them from the common windmill by the smaller, stiff leaf. Let's take a look at this beauty right here. There's in your nursery, and you'll have some others out in the grounds in the future. Boy, this one doesn't have very big. It may not be capsicum. Oh, they've been cut off maybe. This is going to be an interesting one to key out. No, either someone's cut them all off. That's an interesting plant. Capitata usually has big hooks down here, and the other species do not. That may not be a capitata. The Butea have the arching leaves. They arch up. They're very drought tolerant. Over at the Gillespie estate, they've got Butea in what used to be an old parking lot, and the gardener over there told me that they hadn't watered them in 22 years. They have one where the leaf is actually flat and not arching. We call it the lax leaf Butea. We've been trying to find out what it could possibly be. Drought tolerant, cold hardy, will take full sun even when young, not too big. These, and particularly the smaller ones, are probably going to be popular in the future because gardens are going to tend to get smaller and smaller. It's also cold hardy to about 20 degrees, even though it's from Florida. Sets multiple trunks, nice fan leaf, loves sun and heat. It used to be called Perotis radii, now it's called Acelioraphe radii, and it's generally called the Everglades Palm. And it does all right in Santa Barbara area. There's several very nice ones. I mentioned that Phoenix palms are rather promiscuous. The pollen floats a long way. Most Phoenix palms in California now are second and third generation, and they're hybrids. Lotus Land has one of the best collections of what I would consider to be purebred Phoenix reclinatus. And you see how thin those trunks are. They've been peeled, of course, which makes them look thinner. But that's the size that reclinatus should be. And you'll see a lot of them around Santa Barbara and Ventura and everywhere that are about 2 or 3 times that size, and those are probably hybrids, either with the Canary Island date, probably with the Canary Island date. I think the thinner ones really are more attractive, and they have a real good collection of them here. They tend to naturally lean. It would be a freak plant. The Huntington has a Jubioptis cross, and it looks like this, a little more upright. See the other Jubias in the background, how the leaves are a little different? This one very well could be a cross. They're all closely related. They're in the Coccozoid family, and Jubias can cross with Buteas and with Syagris, and that sometimes happens. This could be one.
What did you call it?
These are the palms they used to make the fort during the war.
Make what?
They made a fort out of saw palmettos at Fort Sumter, I believe it was, during the war when they were fighting the British. It's very tall in Florida. This is a nice specimen, though. They're extremely slow in California. They like heat. But the sabals, there are 20, 25 of them. They will grow pretty well here. That one's setting fruit. It looks like it's probably going to be good fruit.
John, do you think it's...
Moriana. And either this is named wrong or the fruit didn't make, because Brahianita has bigger fruit than that. Actually, I think it's named wrong. Brahianita's a little bluer.
John, can you point out a Costa palmate leaf here, since
Sure.
we've got one?
Fan palms sometimes have the midrib going down into the leaf. See how that midrib extends in there? Sabals do that extensively. Trachardias also do that. It's an identifying trait of a lot of kinds of palms. That's called Costa palmate. Australis gets this chinky trunk, and when it gets that age, it's somewhat self-cleaning. Now in the background over there, you'll see the palm with spines. That's Acrocomie toti. It does real well here. It's cold high to about 20 degrees. They don't set much fruit, and the fruit is incredibly hard to germinate, so you don't see a lot of them. But that is a relatively rare palm in California, the one with the spines back there, Acrocomie toti.
That's a South American palm?
Right. It's going to get psychotic. It was at one time Microcolium woodelianum, then it became Lidocarium woodelianum, and now it's Syagris woodelianum. It's a real neat little palm. You notice it looks a little bit like a Robellini. It's even more fine leaf. These are very healthy. They're setting seed. That seed's a long way from being ripe. These are very nice Syagris woodelianum, and it also makes a pretty good house plant. And this is your rarest tree of all your trees here. This is the rarest. This is your Brahianita, the only fruiting one in California. Wow. And you'll see it when it has fruit. You'll see the fruit. At first it's green, and then it gets yellow as it gets ripe, and finally brown. And I think that this tree will eventually be popular in California as people get them. Again, it's got those qualities we're going to need for palms in the future. It's drought tolerant. It's not too big. It'll fit in the average yard. It's cold tolerant to about 20 degrees. It's got a nice kind of a silver back to it. And you'll notice that this one doesn't have a lot of teeth like most of the Armada and Edulis and others. It's almost smooth, and that's one way when you see a small one you can tell it, is it'll have a smooth petiole, whereas the other Brahias have rough petioles.
You said this is the most valuable?
The Brahia Armada, the Baja Blue Palm, it fit real well in the blue garden. They're very slow. They're heavily armed and real spikes. Some of them are spikier than these, but they make a real nice addition to the yard, but you better plant it when you're young, because they're really slow. True sugar palms. This is setting seeds. Don't let anybody fool with those seeds. There are a lot of seeds that'll burn you. When those Caryota seeds get ripe, don't let anyone pick them up. They have uric acid in them and they'll burn you. Camadoria seeds will burn people, and these will burn worse than anything. You gotta be, that's just another reason not to let people on your tours take seeds.
What do you mean burn? What does it do?
Burn and itch. Itches like crazy.
Like
Uric acid.
Why is that there?
Nature. Protection. Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if it's protection.
But you know, I lived in the last house out in Ventura, and Huntington gave me a couple thousand coyote urine seeds one time, and I was doing an experiment tumbling them in a seed tumbler to get them clean, and a skunk came in and ate about 100 of them that hadn't been cleaned yet. And you can't touch those things without itching. Now how it did that, I don't know, but from the island of Guadalupe, it's currently still Brahia edulis, but it will be Erythia edulis again soon. These are an endangered species. The goats have eaten almost every one on the island. Fortunately, they do real well in Southern California. There must be a million of them. But they hybridize, so we could lose the pureness of them. They're a very nice palm. They're not too big. Very cold hardy. Forstariana, the Kinship Palm. It's my personal favorite. I have 220 of them in my yard. They just look so graceful. The seeds take 3 years to form and ripen on the tree. They turn red like that when they're ripe. Then they take, on the average, 1.5 years to germinate, sometimes 6 or 9 months. Very slow. That's why they're basically expensive. This is the sea level palm on the Lord Howe Island. Is this one tree? This is 3. There's difficulty. They have relatively small root structures. If you were going to move this palm here and wanted to be sure it was going to move, you would trench around it out about here, about 6 months ahead of time, and it would respond by pushing some new finger roots underneath, which would help it through the move. Then you would move it. Some species move well, and it's really hard to tell. The Guadalupe palm moves pretty well. The Baja Blue is a killer to move. Canto Phoenix Alexander moves easily, and its closest relative, the king palm, doesn't move worth a damn. You've got to take about 1 year to slowly move a king palm. They don't all move, but some of them do. Howie has moved pretty well. Phoenix moved pretty well.
They do.
And there are big companies that really have it down to a science. They move those big queens, big Washingtonia robustas, and big Phoenix, and they hardly ever lose one. But they know. Now here we have Howie Bell Moriana. This is the second one up the island. And the way you tell it is, see how the leaves arch up like a butea? And the Forstariana, see how they flatten out and relax? Lax leaf, arch leaf. Howie Bell Moriana, Howie Forstariana. And there's a lot of variation in Forstariana. Notice how skinny that one was. Sometimes that'll happen if they're kept in the pot too long. The Forstariana seeds tend to ripen here better than these. Very rarely do these ever get red, and therefore they don't tend to germinate as well. These are scarce. Palms at that stage. But they're also beautiful when they get bigger. A Acacia you can use as a house plant for 10 or 12 years and move it out and put it in your yard and enjoy it some more. So they're very probably Bauerine, but I wouldn't bet money on it. Another one of the rarest palms at Lotus Land. This one's name is Jubioptis Capra. This is one of the 2 or 3 closest relatives to the coconut. And if you think back to your trip to the tropics, look how much that leaf looks like a coconut leaf. It's a very close relative. The fruit is about the size of a marble, and it is very much like a small coconut. This one hasn't fruited yet, but it's about old enough. Maybe that one has.
That one has some fruit forming.
That one has fruit forming. You have 2 of them here. About 15 years ago, one about 1/3 this size sold for $3,000. Pauline Sullivan has one that's about twice this size. It's had fruit for about 6 or 8 years. For every 100 that people get and germinate, about 1 are alive. They tend to rot. No one's figured out how you keep them alive. You can get the sprout started, but keeping it going is difficult. I have about 5 of them. I've done about as well as anybody, and you can just go in there one day and they're dead. They're really discouraging to grow. But it's a beautiful palm. They're from East Africa. How it got so cold hardy from there is hard to say. That part of East Africa never was that far south on any geologic map I've been able to find. These are cold hardy to about 20 degrees. It's related to the Jubea, that's why it's called Jubiopsis. There are really 4 palms. This, Jubioptis Capra from East Africa, the Jubea from South America, and Parajubea cacoides from Ecuador. They're the coconut's closest relatives. And there's little doubt that the growing conditions in the areas are very similar, except for the coconut. Whether these came from the coconut or the coconut came from these, we don't know yet. Someday we may. It's actually East Africa. There are many people that think that the names got switched backwards about 100 years ago because humulus means humble or low, and this is the tall one, and that's the short one. But at any rate, in this country now, this is humulus, this is excelsa. There are no female humulus anywhere in the world. None have ever been found. So it may be a freak plant. You'll see male flowers on 1 or 2 of these. One man spent his lifetime crossing them to try to get a tall female, and he'd gotten down to 8 generations, and he died, and they lost the plants. And no one knows what happened to his life's work. The reason these are so expensive is they all have to be produced by offsets, and they don't divide well, and they take a long time to divide, so they're incredibly expensive. This kind will produce by seed. I have a lot of those I've grown from seed. And I think eventually they'll again get more of a variety of taller kinds. Rafus palms, very, very good houseplants.
Here's the first meeting of our class. Stephen's mail order catalog in 1893 had small plants for sale of those. And obviously he planted them out on the grounds here, extensive plantings of Chilean wine palms. You'll also see them, there's a few right across from the mission at the upper end of that lawn. Not very near the rose garden, but more up towards where the aqueduct is.
I've had one of these in my yard for 20 years, and it's in a sandy place, so it's not typical, but it doesn't even have a trunk yet in 20 years. These guys are old, I'll tell you, and they probably do go back, at least some of them, to Stephen's time.
Same general part of the palm family that cocoa palms are in, the coconut palm. And if you take the fruit of these and cut them, you can scrape out a little coconut meat from the inside. Tastes just like coconuts, but they're pretty small.
They sell them in markets occasionally. Yeah. The Acrocomie again. This is one of a few of this size in California, and you can see the spines better from this side. You'll see some variation in them. Some of them have yellow fruit, some of them have orange, and there's one in here, I think it's that one, has very red fruit. And they probably are slightly different. And you'll see differences in the size of the teeth. And it may be that they're more different than we realize. The time they were planted, people had a lot of money, and God knows what they might have bought. They might have bought something that you couldn't go find anywhere today. I'm sure that's true of the Gillespie estate, and it's probably true here. Now we will go, and a lot of what we call reclinata in Southern California are really reclinata crossed with that. But here again, these are authentic type reclinatas with the thin trunk. These are for real. These are the true, I'm sure these are the true.
Good.